the stats of people who, were hurt in those ways, or like crime or rates in the city.
Yeah.
Obviously, like if you come from somewhere that doesn't have those kind of crime rates, that's a little fear inducing. But I grew up in the burbs, so I was like, oh yeah, like I knew that. But growing up, I was always growing up in the burbs, Chicago was always this like scary place. That was the picture.
It can be.
Yeah. I had never been, but I had just heard about it growing up, that like Chicago was this crazy place 45 minutes away. I didn't go to Chicago for the first time probably until I was in high school.
Oh, so you never like went to see the lights or ice skating at like Christmas time? Or
No.
That was so fun when I was a little kid. We did that all the time.
Yeah. So I think we're live now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think I saw a little button that said live. So we'll just give it a second for folks who want to jump on Facebook Live and to watch us. If you are watching tonight, let us know where you're watching from, whether that's Peoria or your living room or Dunlap or Texas or somewhere else around the country. You can always comment in the comment sections and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to know that. Tonight's forum basically is going to be looking at a few different questions that we're gonna walk through. And then we'll allow there to be space at the end if anyone has any specific questions. So as we're doing the podcast, if you have a certain question that pops into your mind, just feel free to pop it right into Facebook, because at the end of our interview time, we'll look at some of those questions. But for those of you who haven't been watching the last few weeks, we are in a series on Sunday mornings about the Lord's Prayer. And this last week, we talked about "Give us this day our daily bread," and that stanza in the prayer. And so we try to focus a little bit on what it means to not get overwhelmed by all of the issues and challenges and problems we see in the world, but just try to be present to the one issue or the one person on the one day that is before us, and know that that is enough, and that we're each doing one thing each day for one person in some unique way, right? And some of us maybe we were able to do more. All that adds up and makes a difference in making sure that others' needs are met, and that prayer isn't just something prayed, but also something lived out. So we are going to be talking tonight about what it looks like to be present to the needs around us. And there's a lot of different contexts and ways we can be present, but so we wanted to focus in specifically tonight, talking with Lisa McCormick about what it looks like to be present when you're at home with your kids. And Lisa and I were talking 2 minutes ago about her husband is home working from home, and that's different than usual for their normal rhythm. And so what does it look like when that whole dynamic is different and your routine is changed, and how can we be more present during this time of quarantine? So Lisa, thank you for being willing to engage and just share tonight about where you're coming from and what this quarantine's been like. So that's the first question. What has this quarantine looked like for you?
So I'd like to say that it looks a lot different than my normal life, but honestly, I spend most of my day doing the exact same things that I had to do before. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 kids, and usually 2 of them go to school during the week, but one of them I'm always with. And so I guess I've just spent parenting. I've spent a lot of time planning. I think a lot of people are spending a lot of time like planning how they're going to go to the store, or planning more meals because you can't go to a restaurant, or making way more food at home, cleaning the house way more, since now all 5 people are living in it all the time instead of like two people most of the time. So, and then there's just way more parenting because all 3 of the kids are home all the time. So, yeah. And then I got another job to facilitate the distance learning for my 2 girls. And I have to keep a 3-year-old busy at the same time. So that's been pretty challenging, actually, to make sure that everyone's getting the attention they need. So I've been really busy, which a lot of people have talked to, like, oh, I'm going to be so bored staying home. And it's like, this is not boring. This is very busy.
So for parents that are also sort of like running a 3-ring circus right now with 3 kids at home, like, what are some things you've done to be able to provide that sort of hands-on learning for your two oldest who are in school and then the 3-year-old, while also like managing all that at the same time?
Yeah. So, okay. So one of the biggest things that I've tried to focus on from the very beginning was routine. So that the kids could feel some level of control with their environment. So, so I have a almost 9-year-old. She's a 3rd grader. And then I have a 1st grader who just turned 7. And so they both are getting materials at the beginning of the week and we have to go through the different subjects every day. But I've tried to create a routine that we can follow every single day where we're all doing the same things at the same time. Nobody feels like they're not getting like that they have more work to do than someone else. So I would say there was a significant amount of planning involved in trying to make sure that there can be a routine. Also things like eating healthy, exercising, limiting screen time. So like and we established this from the beginning, there's no screen time at all during the school day, which is like, so I'm glad that I said that from the beginning. It was a struggle for about a week or so, but now everyone knows the rule. But it's just interesting. It's going from school in a public school environment to home. There were just a lot of rules and routine that the kids did not know what to expect. So we talked a lot about expectations and routine, and also I make sure they get a lot of breaks. And then I also try to incorporate specific times where I ask them how they're feeling. I have, like, my oldest is really good at identifying her feelings and sharing them. My middle child is very reserved. And so I have to ask her a lot how she's feeling, or give her chances to try to express her feelings, maybe non-verbally, so that I know she's not kind of like holding everything inside. But I have to, I mean, it's been really difficult with my son, my 3-year-old. I mean, I'm not giving him enough attention, and it's been, that's difficult. He needs more attention. He needs more of my attention, and it's just impossible. So you just, I've had to change some of the expectations that I've had for myself as well. So we've all changed our expectations of each other.
Yeah, I kind of have 2 questions based on what you just shared there. One was about screen time, but we can come back to that. And the other one was more about, what are you doing to help your children like name their emotions when they like don't know the words? Is there a chart that has like a bunch of emoji faces that you're telling them, point to which one you feel like right now? Or like, what is it that you're doing to help them identify that?
Yeah, so those are great. There are lots of resources that people can use to, especially for kids that might be like nonverbal or something like that. But no, we don't use any kind of charts like that. But we do, it's mostly just me asking, or like the other day, we have a fire pit in our backyard, and we were roasting marshmallows because it was a nice night, and we made s'mores. And I was like, okay, guys, let's go around and share one thing that I think I said one thing that we're scared of, and one thing that we're really grateful for, or something like that. And so so it like I mean, so for my oldest, she said something, she was afraid. I mean, she said, I'm afraid of coronavirus, which she had said that to me before. And so we've talked through it before, but but I think for then the middle one was like, oh, okay, it's okay to say something that I'm afraid of. Everyone's going to do it. So I don't know, just every child is different, the way they need to express themselves. Or a lot of times they are more open to talking about their feelings like right before they're going to go to sleep at night. So that's where a lot of the interaction comes to. We kind of go through our day. My youngest always wants to know what we're going to do tomorrow. So he's like, Mom, sit in my chair and tell me what we're going to do tomorrow. That's what we talk about every night. And I don't think he necessarily really cares. I think it's more the routine of knowing what to expect and feeling control, some kind of control over his life. So, and he's
That makes
3.
sense.
I mean, that a 3-year-old can, I think that's interesting, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and if his routine is used to having more of mom, and now he's having to learn how to share. 3-year-olds are great at sharing, in my experience. So I'm sure sharing toys is hard, but let alone sharing mom with siblings in a unique way, it's got to be a huge tug of war. Yeah.
Yeah, it is difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's and it's one of the things that we've just, or I guess I've just been like, well, this is how it is for this time, and we accept it. We can't really change it, so we're just gonna move on and try our best to meet needs however we can. But I mean, I guess I'm not gonna dwell. I'm not a dweller on the negative, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. So for those parents and families that are like balancing that screen time stuff, like I think that's probably definitely a good boundary that you've drawn for them, so that they know, like, even though you're home, usually when you're home you can have screen time, but this is going to be homeschooling time, and then after homeschooling's over you can have it. So I know a lot of parents who basically have expanded the screen time beyond what is normal, because it's just like they just can't, like, they can't do it all the time, and they need their children to be able to like escape into another reality so that they can like ground themselves in their current reality as parents. So like, have you eased up on that at all? Are you allowing some more screen time? Are you giving yourself the grace and patience? Like, would you say anything to parents who are trying to figure out what to do in that space right now? Because we also, like, this quarantine's not going to last forever, and you're going to have to figure out how to adjust that again. And you have like growing pains. And I imagine it's like when you try to get a child to sleep alone in their bed, right? There's some resistance at first. And they keep running out into the room and screaming. So, there may be that same resistance again when you decide to change the rules and you can't have as much screen time.
Yeah. So one thing I will say about, there's a couple of things that jumped out in my brain when you were asking me about that. So the first thing about screen time in general, different kids react to screen time differently. 2 of my kids screens affect them in a very negative way. So the more screen time they have, I can absolutely see a negative behavior correlation there. It's not good. So I've had to always been pretty strict with them on their screen time. The other one, she could watch TV all day long and be fine. So, but we got to be fair, because the last thing mom needs is an extra argument about something that I can control. So anyway, so that's every parent who's wondering about screen time probably needs to think about how screens affect their child specifically. But also, so that's why I drew that hard boundary at the very beginning. And there was a lot of pushback for a couple weeks, but now it's like, well, it's not worth whining anymore because I'm not going to get my way, right? But absolutely, there's more screen time in general than they used to have. And that, because if we finish school at 1 or 2 in the afternoon, that's an extra couple of hours every day where they would have been in school probably, or doing something like in the car, going to an activity or something. So yes, they have been watching more screen time, but it's, I guess I'm just like, well, you've watched too much now, so now you have to do something else. And it's just another thing that I've had to stay on top of. And I also want to mention, I think a lot of parents who have had to just, where they're just like, I can't deal with this, you just have to be on a screen. I imagine a lot of those parents work full-time or are now having to work from home. And I absolutely recognize my privilege that I'm not working, that I can be home and present with my kids all day. Luckily, my husband's still employed. So I guess I wouldn't beat myself up about it. I mean, my kids eat way too much candy now too. So, I mean, we used to be like a two sugary treats a day, like small treats per day. And now I don't even know. I don't know what they're eating.
Oh,
they're not hungry.
Like, have you had to learn to like, or how have you learned to like be gracious and patient with yourself in that? Like, I'm sure having to let go of certain things and not fight certain battles that, you know, you're just like, it's just not worth it, you know?
Yeah. So I think parents do this every day anyway. Like, I think parents are constantly thinking about, how am I going to make everything more fair to reduce stress, or how are we going to make sure that everybody, is getting what they need. So, but so on the Enneagram, I'm a 1. So I care about fairness, obviously, but I also have very high expectations of myself and others. And so I think the biggest thing that I've had to adjust are just my expectations of myself.
Yeah.
And I'm more introverted, and so I need a lot of time alone to just relax my brain and process things. And so that is one of the things that has decreased a lot for me, is my alone time. Not only I don't get as many breaks during the day because all of my kids are home all day. But also my husband's home at night, where I used to get like hours by myself at night. And so, not to say I love my husband. I'm glad he's here. So anyway, but I've just had to say to myself several times, like, kids, or not to myself, but to my kids, like, look, I know that you need me, but mommy needs to be alone right now so that I can be a good mommy for you later. And I mean, I've said that to them plain. And I think, so they've had to rely on each other for some of their like needs, like hugs sometimes, or just wanting to tell a story to somebody, or come look at this project or this thing I built with Legos, and I think that's fine for me to say that, because I'm no use to anyone else if I'm not filling up my cup first, basically. So
yeah, that makes total sense. So you spoke a little to something earlier, which I think is really great. So we're during this pandemic, the pastoral staff were basically like trying to figure out like what people are in what situations, right? Like who's unemployed, who's in single family homes, who's got somebody who's working and trying to like also like care for their children. And so it's interesting. There are 12 households out of 42 households at Imago of folks parents who just like they don't have jobs outside of the home, but their job is to raise like the kids in the house and to care for them in that way. And then the other, I don't know what's 12 minus 42. I don't actually know. That's why I'm in the pastor. Whatever that other statistic is, our folks, which is, what is it, 30? Is that what you said? I'll take it. 30 it is. So 30 other families are dealing at this point, household at Imago, with this, like, I'm working still from home. Both parents are working from home and having to raise the kids in a unique way and having to do school. And so you talk about your privilege and what that looks like for you. But what would you say to those other families, the ones who are the other 12 that are like you, that this is just like some new things added to their rhythm and their routine, but then also those who like have their normal rhythm routine and this other stuff added? Like, is there anything specific you would say to them?
I would say our biggest saving grace has been establishing a routine. I can't stress that enough. Kids really love rules and routine. Sometimes they make them up for themselves, and that's fine. And the other thing I would say is, for everyone, just give yourself a break. I mean, I truly believe that parents who worked full time, and I would go on a limb and say specifically mothers who work full time, they were barely making it anyway, working full time and trying to raise a family at the same time. And then now they have to do distance learning, and it's impossible. I mean, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, and it's impossible. I think we're all kind of waking up and realizing, wow, this was really hard for parents to work full time and try to raise a family. So I don't think anyone should think less of you if your kid watches TV all day. I mean, just give yourself a break. This is hard. And some days it's just impossible. And if it just is.
Yeah. I think it's good for folks to hear other people say that. You know, you can tell yourself that from the first thing you wake up in the morning, and then tell yourself that so that you can fall asleep at night. But if you don't hear other people saying that, I know, like, I've listened to several podcasts, and sometimes I listen to like people talk about their plans and the ways they're going to make things work and how it's all coming together. And I'm like, man, this has to be depressing for parents that are like not able to get it all together, right? Like they are just not able to be present to all the needs because there just isn't enough time in the day to do it. Or their kids aren't used to these regimens, and it takes months and months to regiment children just into new routines. It's not, immediate overnight, or it's a matter of a few weeks, especially when like the parents themselves are dealing with fatigue. So like there is like this grace and this peace, I think, that comes from like hearing one another like tell each other like what you're doing is enough, and it's hard, and you're not going to do all of it perfect, especially if you're one on the Enneagram and you think everything has to be perfect, right? Like right. You're going to have to like be okay with everything not being okay all the time, right? And with you not doing everything 100%. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I think that's really, really important, that we're all in different places in this. So as hard as it is, tell us also, like, what are some things that are like bringing you joy right now? Some things that are making you laugh in this season.
Well, it's been really nice to have my husband home. He's really funny. I like to laugh with him.
That was a good Freudian slip there.
I like to laugh with him, but okay, I'll tell you a story about the other day. So it was not raining the other day. I don't know what day it was, sometime this weekend. And so we have a fenced in backyard. Again, another privilege that we have. So I can send them outside and know they won't escape. So yeah. So I sent them outside, and I went out there. I was out there too, and I was like, all right, guys, I need to go, I don't know, do some chore that I needed to do. And Lily was like, Mom, we want to do a 3-legged race, but you have to be Leon's partner, because there's only 3 of them, right? So they needed a 4th person. And I was like, oh, fine. So she got some bandanas, and like the girls tied their legs together, and I tied my leg together with Leon. and we're, running across the yard to the other end of the fence. And so it's funny, like at the beginning I was like, oh, like I really have stuff I have to do. But then by the end I was like laughing hysterically, genuinely laughing hysterically about how silly and funny this was. I mean, kids can be the silliest, most joyful things ever. I mean, they can be really frustrating sometimes, but they are like, they're the best. So, I mean, how I try to remind myself at the end of the day, like just how lucky I am. Like we're all healthy and we're all together. And there are I live with 4 other people that I love and they love me. And I'm like the luckiest person ever. We can hug each other. So I think, like, I don't know, I try to live in the positive room in my mind.
Yeah.
The time.
So what you're telling me is that when this is all over, you plan on doing homeschooling.
No, I discovered I'm a terrible teacher. Especially with my oldest, when I'm like trying to teach her something and she's like, I don't know how to do it. I'm like, I know, that's why I'm teaching it to you, but I'm afraid I'm not gonna learn it. And he's like, I'm trying to teach it to you, but if you're just gonna cry, I don't know how to do that.
It sounds like you're having to hold a lot of things at once. Your teacher and counselor all at the same time.
I don't know.
So what is like saving your life right now is a question that Barbara Brown Taylor, a leader in the progressive Christian movement, often asks. So what is saving your life in this season?
Well, maybe that I'm an introvert. I don't mind being home at all. I wish everyone else would leave, but I don't mind being at home. That's a joke. Honestly, I think I already said it. Like, I just feel so lucky that I try to find purpose in all the things that I'm doing. And I think if you look for good and you look for God in everything that you're doing, that it's easy to find it. So, I mean, there was a time in my life I got really sick in 2015. I had strep throat, and then I got this weird reaction to it where every joint in my body became swollen and it was very painful. And I guess I kind of compare life like to that now. So nothing is as bad as thinking you're dying and that you can't move and that everything's painful. So I feel like there are sad things. Like I miss my friends and I miss my parents, and they're far away and they're not, they're older, and so but there is still joy in living every day. I know that sounds really cliche, but I guess that's how I feel.
Yeah, and I imagine that can be really hard to remind yourself of that when you're in the midst of all of it, and then you can't find a minute to get away and to just remind yourself of the things that will ground you. So I love that you said earlier, which was basically like you were creating new boundaries with your family of just like, you were learning to tell them like, hey, mom needs space. I need time so that I can ground myself. Otherwise, I am not going to be in a good headspace. And I know, like, for some parents, like, they cannot leave their kids alone for a second because God knows what will happen. But I think that if we can learn to find those rhythms and those moments, right, where we can like ask our children for something and ask our spouses for something, or ask a friend if we're raising our children in a single way, and like something that maybe we wouldn't have asked before, so that like our daily needs are being met, so that we can meet the daily needs of those who are present in our families. So I really liked that advice you gave tonight, that we have to be willing to ask that of each other and give that to each other, so that we can, because none of us are going to be able to do this without naming our needs and then having them be met, right? Like your kids are naming their emotions. You need space to do the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think anyone who's been married long enough knows to be very specific about the things that they need with their spouse. There have been nights I'm like, I'm going to drink a glass of wine and you're going to take the kids and you're going to go on a walk and you're going to be gone for half an hour and you cannot come home until the 30 minutes is up, because I'll go crazy. And then, but you have to be willing to, you have to be willing to ask. And it's fine. It's not weakness to ask for help. Yeah,
that's a good word. I notice, I'm looking right outside my window here, and there's I have neighbors, and they've got all this like little tech toy, tiny tech, I forget what it's called, toys, you know what I'm talking about, all this like stuff sitting on the porch. And just about every day around 4:30, the dad comes home from work, he pulls in the driveway, and I tell you, no sooner than he pulls in that driveway, those kids are on that patio with him, and that mom is nowhere to be seen. And I know exactly what's happening every day at 4:30. She is getting her moment of relief, and they do not go inside until usually around 5:30. And I just, I've noticed that regimen and that change in their routine. And I think it's beautiful. Someone's clearly had some conversations there that were helpful. So that's great. So yeah, thanks for being willing to spend time just sharing vulnerably and honestly, like what's going on in your house and how you're handling this. I think that there's something all of us can learn and take away from it. So I'm looking, Little Tykes, that's the name. Thank you, Laura Holmes, for saving the day. She just commented, Little Tykes. That's I
didn't know what you were talking about.
I know, your face
little
was
technology.
Just like confusion. Yeah, so but we did have a question here that came in. Diane said, "Hey Lisa, did you get a kitty or a dog yet?"
Oh God, no. So when Joel's not home, like before coronavirus, I was like, I run a tight ship, and that was basically how I could keep the house going. And the kids ask for a pet probably every day. Different pets all the time. And I'm like, I have 3 kids. I don't need another pet. I don't need another living thing to try to keep alive every day.
Yes. Love that. Well, Ken reminds us today that it is Teacher Appreciation Day. And I think based on everything that people have been experiencing the last months, they have a whole new appreciation for teachers, right? I hope so.
Absolutely.
It's real skill and gift that is honed, and people have degrees in it, right? And they have to go back for continual education because new techniques and children's abilities are continually developing. So none of us have all those degrees. None of us have all of those seminars we've gone to and techniques and boring after school trainings that I'm sure many of them have to sit through and would rather not be checking emails and grading papers instead. But reality is like we have to be gracious with each other. We're doing the best we can, and there's a reason that we pay teachers to do what they do, because they're very skilled and we appreciate them for all that they do with our kids. So, and we appreciate you and what you're doing in your household, and for sharing tonight about how you're trying to do the very best you can with the skills and times you've been given. So thanks for joining us tonight, Lisa. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks. It's been fun.
Good. I'm glad.
I got 35 minutes alone.
Yes, look at that.
Well, not really, but with you.
Yes.
It feels more like no one was touching me.
There we go. It makes a difference. You can also not go upstairs until 6 o'clock and just say, boy, that interview went really long tonight.
They're eating the dinner I made that took me 2 hours. They can enjoy it.
I hope they leave you something.
It's fine.
Yes. Well, we will be doing this again next week at 6 o'clock. We had to boost the time up a little earlier today because I have actually a meeting this evening. But next week, we'll be doing this again at 6 o'clock. We'll be meeting with Michelle Gade, and she's going to be talking about the passage that talks about forgiveness, about forgiving others as we have been forgiven. And so Michelle is going to share about her own journey and her own battles that she's gone through with being someone who is in need of receiving forgiveness, as well as a desperate need to learn how to forgive and extend that amidst a lot of hurt. So she's going to be talking with us next week at 6 o'clock here on Facebook Live on Tuesday night. So we hope that you'll tune in again to be able to engage that conversation in our special edition of Imago Voices video. So thanks so much, y'all. And thanks again, Lisa, for joining us. Have a good night.
Sure. Right. Bye.